by our press reviewer, Florence Vimino. Hello, Florence.
Hi, Lorna.
Right, so of course it's a story that's been gripping the nation and indeed perhaps the world, these series of shootings around Toulouse and the raid on Mohamed Merah's flat that followed. And that's dominating the press this morning.
Absolutely. It's on the front page of virtually every paper in France. We're going to start by looking at Libération, the left-leaning newspaper, that says Zone d'ombre. It's exploring the gray areas, all these questions that have emerged following the police raid. And it says among these questions, for instance, it wonders whether police investigations started early enough, wonders why it took police so long to identify Mohamed Merah. They wonder why he wasn't still under surveillance. He had been under surveillance before. Why had he kind of slipped through the net? Were there intelligence failures? Why was he shot dead? According to Libération, they wonder whether the presidential campaign put pressure on the police to act quickly. And it's interesting. They have a very interesting editorial in the left-leaning newspaper that says that terrorism poses a fundamental problem to democracy. Basically, how can democracies defend themselves from terrorism? And according to Libération, there are two main scenarios. The first one is some countries do away with the rule of law by saying that terrorists take advantage of the weaknesses of democracies. And according to Libération, an example of this is post 9/11, the USA after 9/11. And the other scenario is to fight terrorism with freedom and information. And they say that this is what a post Utoya massacre Norway looked like. And now their editorial says that France is traumatized after this week of terror, and it needs transparent answers to several things, mainly the circumstances of the raid and were there intelligence failures.
Okay, and interesting questions that will have to be answered over how France is going to react, whether it will take the US or the Norwegian route later on. But in the short term, the lots of questions over the role of the domestic intelligence service in all this, the DCRI. That's getting a lot of criticism from the left and the right.
From the left and the right, and it's interesting to note that the French foreign minister, Alain Juppé, said, I can understand why people are asking questions, were there intelligence failures, and we need to clarify this. Now, a lot of people are saying that the domestic intelligence service didn't realize just how dangerous Merah was, let him fall through the net. And even though, as I mentioned earlier, he was under surveillance, so a lot of people are wondering why they let him slip through the net like that. Now, it's interesting to note that the DCRI was created by Sarkozy in 2008. Now, the aim was to become what I quote, a war machine against terrorism and espionage. Now, a lot of people seem to say that this has failed. It's interesting to note that the intelligence service, flaws in the intelligence service are becoming fodder for the presidential campaign. Marine Le Pen, François Bayrou, all sorts of candidates are speaking out, criticizing the intelligence services, and national security is definitely taking the center stage in the presidential campaign.
And the right-wing paper, Le Figaro, on the other hand, is applauding the way the authorities dealt with this. They say couldn't really have been better.
Absolutely, perhaps somewhat unsurprisingly, they say mission accomplished. Le Figaro is obviously often a cheerleader for Nicolas Sarkozy and his government's policies. In their editorial, they actually answer to critics of the government, saying that it's okay to answer, it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to try to fix things, but it talks out against people who are launching this fake debate, trying to spark a controversy where there isn't one. It defends the authorities and says that they acted quickly and out of respect for the rule of law. It says that France is an example on the international stage when it comes to fighting terrorism. It takes a jab, actually, at the Socialist Party, saying that it has no experience when it comes to law and order.
And staying with Le Figaro, they're also talking about how France counters terrorism threats like this.
Absolutely. Le Figaro says that keeping track of, especially these lone wolf kind of jihadists, is a real headache. And it says that it's hard to identify them, it's hard to keep track of them, but it has been a top priority of the authorities since the 1990s that the authorities keep these individuals and their entourage under close surveillance. But it's interesting to note that the Figaro says that it's impossible to keep everybody under surveillance all the time.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, France, for that quick scoot through some of the reaction in the French newspapers this Friday. Thanks. Well, it's time now to get a reminder of our top stories.